Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Hump Day. Welcome into Soccer Morning. Here we go on a Wednesday, firing off Champions League Day. We had Champions League yesterday, more Champions League today, both kinds. European, North American, CONCACAF Champions League getting underway tonight in Mexico City. Very much looking forward to that. Today is a full day of soccer. If you want to partake in various different versions of the sport, you've got the UEFA Champions League coming up this afternoon. You've got the CONCACAF Champions League coming up tonight. The United States U23s take on the Mexico U23s in a friendly in Carson. So that's on the agenda as well. We're going to cover all of these things today on Soccer Morning. As I've been doing all this week, since we announced it on Monday, I think it's time to review the situation as it relates to our big start on Sirius XM FC. And I say start because this show is not going away. This version of the program, the show that is Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk, that's streamed on the web and available on iTunes after the fact, is not going away. And on YouTube. We're going to do that every day from 9 to 10-ish a.m. Eastern. The Sirius XM FC show from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern is a completely different program. Completely different. 2 different hours. No video in that case. Only available if you subscribe to Sirius XM Sirius XM. We've established that there is, in fact, an on-demand feature available with some packages of Sirius that allow you to play the show back later on. So you should be able to do that. Sirius is available on your phone, clearly in your car. You know that. So if you're interested, go sign up. You make sure you get the package that has Sirius XM FC, and you'll be able to hear the new show from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. But if you don't want to do that, that's a little too much. You can't justify the expense. Totally get it. This show's not going anywhere. It'll just be moved back an hour and start at 9 a.m. instead of 10 a.m. So everybody should be clear on this, right? Everybody clear? We got it? We've had a lot of questions. I understand. It's a little bit confusing, especially since both shows are going to be operating under the same name. But it's 2 different shows. All right. On this program today, Leander Sherlackins to talk about the Champions League. We got those 2 matches yesterday. 2 matches coming up today. We'll look both backwards and forwards, get Leander's thoughts on how these quarterfinals are playing out and what to expect from the 2 teams that have already advanced to the semis and who might be joining them today. Also on today's program, our friend Eric Gomez from south of the border. Oh, sorry, I got my guests mixed up. I apologize for that. I think 5 minutes before the show, it still said that. Janis Mihalik will join us today. Janis is excellent. I'm glad that we fixed that. Apologies. Janis Mihalik will join us to talk Champions League at 10:10. So in a couple of minutes. I got that wrong. But Eric Gomez is definitely on the show, right? Right? This is the fun of live radio. Eric Gomez on this show to talk about Mexico. We'll preview the Champions League final with Club America hosting in Montreal Impact tonight. We've got Cuauhtemoc Blanco going out as the champion. Copa MX final. Puebla beating Chivas Guadalajara last night 4-2. Blanco getting a hero's send-off last night on the shoulders of his teammates, being cheered and feted. Long career in Mexican football. 42 years old, Cuauhtemoc Blanco. A legend down there. A legend in certain parts of the United States as well, clearly. Miguel Herrera's decisions between the Copa America and the Gold Cup will be on my agenda as well. And we might talk about what Eric Gomez expects from that U23 team that's taking on the United States in California this evening. In the news, again, Champions League, top of the list. Barcelona taking down PSG 2-0. Neymar with a pair of goals. I always expected Barcelona to finish that off, especially since they had dominated in the away leg in Paris. PSG just not up to the task here. Lots of talent in that squad, but Edinson Cavani didn't get it done. Zlatan can't carry the whole load by himself. He didn't get good performances out of guys like Pastore. It just wasn't there for them. In Barcelona, Iniesta on fire, playing like he's 10 years younger. We already know about that triumvirate at the front, Neymar, Messi, Suarez. Nearly impossible to stop. Nearly impossible. You have to be on top of your game to have any chance at all of stopping those guys from scoring. Now, maybe you can outscore Barcelona, and we'll see if that's the case in the next round. But for the time being, PSG didn't have the guns to get it done. Meanwhile, in Germany, Bayern Munich, after going down 3-1 in the away leg in Portugal, it didn't look dire because it's Bayern Munich, and you know they have the talent to get by. But it did. You did wonder, hey, maybe this is going to be a challenge. Well, challenge accepted. Challenge accomplished. Challenge checked off the list as Bayern Munich absolutely eviscerated Porto in that first half. And then just went on, tack on a few more goals. Okay, Lewandowski, Thomas Müller is on just top of his game. Thomas Müller, a lot of talk about Thomas Müller and how good he is and whether or not he's underrated. I don't underrate the guy. Maybe he's underrated. Maybe because he's been Bayern fixture, you take him for granted. Maybe because he's not flashy, you take him for granted. But if you're building a team, you could do a hell of a lot worse. He may be the third or fourth guy on that list. You're building a team. You're starting a team from scratch. You want to go win the Champions League. Yeah, Thomas Müller is a guy that you might want in that squad. He certainly would be in most people's first choice to go win a Champions League. But he might be the second or third guy you pick. Pep Guardiola tearing his pants was hilarious. Got a little excited. That suit just a little too tight. That's the style these days. Pep showing a little leg last night in Munich. The Champions League today, Monaco and Juventus. Juventus takes a 1-goal aggregate lead to the Principality with a chance to advance. Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid in the return leg of that grudge match, the Madrid derby. And the element here that it's most talked about is the fact that this is going to have to be Cristiano Ronaldo's show. There's no Gareth Bale. There's no Luka Modric. There's no Karim Benzema. There's no Marcelo. This is going to be a lot for Cristiano Ronaldo to do. Again, Real Madrid, incredibly talented team, has the depth to get by. But without those fixtures, it's going to be a different challenge. Can you stop Griezmann? Can you handle Atletico Madrid's physicality? Because if Ronaldo gets frustrated, I don't know. Going to be interesting. And we'll tack this on to the discussion with Eric Gomez a little bit later. Chicharito Hernandez, will he get the start? Expect him to get the start. What kind of impact can he have on Real Madrid with Benzema gone? CONCACAF Champions League first leg, as I mentioned, Club America and Montreal Impact is sell out at the Azteca. Montreal sold something like 60,000 tickets for their leg next week. What does Montreal need to do to give themselves a chance? How close does it need to be? How actually, the better way to ask this, and Club America is an inconsistent team, could they just as easily throw up a dud tonight as dominate Montreal? But what kind of gap can Montreal expect to possibly overcome? If it's not a 1-goal deficit, it's going to be difficult to imagine them getting it done at home, in spite of the crowd that they're going to have at Olympic Stadium. News in Mexico as well, or out of for Mexican football fans as well. Giovanni Dos Santos to miss 4 weeks for Villarreal. That's not good news for him. And I mentioned Blanco going out on top. 4-2 winners at Puebla in the Copa MX final game for Blanco. He's retiring. He's going to go into politics, probably win everything. We'll follow his career. Love it when former footballers go into politics. USA-Mexico U23 battle at the StubHub Center is tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. It actually is broadcast on Univision Deportes and Unimas if you want to watch that. So there you go. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, the guy that I got it wrong, but I got it right now, Janusz Mihalik, very much looking forward to this. Talk some Champions League. It's Soccer Morning, WorldSoccerTalk.com. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Face in the crowd, you're talking too loud, but I can't hear you calling.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we go, talking a little Champions League with our friend Janis Shahalik. You know him from ESPN, Fox. He's all over the place. He's a busy guy. We were just talking about his schedule. I don't even know if I could handle it, Janis. And you're traveling, and you're all over the place. You're a marvel. And it's your birthday, so happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and congratulations to you and Trevor. Sirius XMFC, I know how long you've been working for that, so it's awesome to see people like you getting their rewards.
I appreciate that. I'm
looking forward to that, and since I'm there from time to time, maybe we'll get to chat.
Absolutely. I expect that we will. We get to chat now. We get to chat about the Champions League, and both of those matches yesterday. I guess I'll start with Barcelona. We may end up spending more time on Bayern Munich. Barcelona 2-0 over PSG. And before we get to what Barcelona brings, Neymar with a couple of goals, Iniesta just, I don't know, I was going to say recapturing some glory, and I've seen some quotes from him that's saying, I never went anywhere, which is true. It was a strong performance from him. The other end of this is PSG, and just, I don't know, is this a lack of is this a lack of just the extra element that teams need to have to succeed? Is it a bad draw every time out when they get Barcelona? What is it that's missing for PSG?
Well, I think, when to become a winner is such a fine line, isn't it? Right? And you look at the first leg, it was decided then. Obviously, they were missing key players in that game. It's not out of convenience that we're going to mention David Luiz, but when you look at both legs, he was guilty on, I could probably say 4 to 5 goals, right? That against any team, but especially against Barcelona, you have to be sound there. You have to have a unit that understands what defending means. And first and foremost understands that defending comes first if you're a defender. Because we forget about that, don't we? We talk about fullbacks that are bombing forward, and we love it, right? We talk, how many, they're being encouraged to do that, right? But first things first, and that's defending. And David Luiz, he's not a defender. And it's it's worth repeating that because everybody knows that, but his managers, for some reasons, no matter where he plays.
I know.
And, and I hate to put it on him because, of course, it's never as simple as that. But, that's a start right there. I think they have players that are ready to step to that level. And they're close. I think you and I have chatted about it. I think they're closer to Manchester City. It's a new project, and we know. Look, it took look how long it took Real Madrid to get the La Decima. It's not that simple, even if you have great players.
On the other side of things for Luis Enrique and Barcelona, it just could not have gone better in this tie. They dominated in Paris. They dominated home. They may not. We're going to get to what Bayern Munich did to Porto here in a minute. But after the first leg, you sort of picked this out and said, "Oh wait, look at this. Maybe Barcelona is the favorite to go on and win this title." They probably still are. And again, Bayern Munich was rampant against Porto. But what is it about Barcelona? And again, when you have that trio of attacking talent, that's almost impossible to stop. That's going to paper over a lot of cracks, but are they a complete enough team to go out and get this done? If they end up playing somebody like, let's say Atletico Madrid comes through, and they have to face a team that's going to maybe do a better job of locking them down.
I think they are a better team. Let's not forget, they got hammered by Bayern Munich, right, because of that lack of balance. But defensively, you have to say that they're much better. How can you not say that? Piqué is playing much better. Mascherano's always been steady for them, right? But then you look at it like somebody like Jeremy Mathieu, right? No-nonsense defender who understands what defending is. On set pieces, as we've seen in La Liga, he scored a couple goals, right? And you could argue that he should have been a starter over Mascherano. So all of a sudden you have Luis Enrique that actually has choices in the back. Remember last year or the year before, he had no choices. You look at that and he says, oh my God, defensively this is a disaster, right? So I think you have to admit that they're much, much better. Again, I think Iniesta's just coming good. We have to say that. And he understands that. Yeah, he's never left, but he's never been the same.
Right.
This was the sort of run that defies what kind of player he is. It's just incredible. So, that's a plus. Busquets has had injuries. He's as wonderful as it gets if he doesn't go down to ground too early, of course. We know that's a minus in his game, but overall, don't let the haters tell you, oh, he goes down this and that, because he's a marvelous, marvelous player in that position. Exactly what you need in that. And look, I mean, Suarez is coming good. You knew it was going to take time, right? You knew, the 6 games, whatever it was, I can't remember now, at the beginning of the season. You pay the price for that. I still don't think he's a 100%. But if he gets that extra 5%, say, that's a huge difference, in the latter stages of La Liga and the Champions League. And Messi is Messi. It's as simple as that. So I think they are deeper. Rakitic, for example, what an addition he has been, right? I mean, he's your, Xavi, and I'm not trying to compare the two, but, we knew Xavi was part of the reason that Barcelona struggled, right? Because he was kind of getting older and you couldn't get as much out of him. In comes Rakitic, early on he had to adjust. Now he's doing a great job. So yes, this is a much different and a better Barcelona team. However, as you said, I mean, it's a fine line, and Bayern Munich is going to be a one, obstacle to negotiate. And so will Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid. I mean, you can't, even if I were to tell you that Barcelona is even better than they were, say, in 99, 2000, when they were winning it all, there's still no guarantees, because, there's 2 or 3 teams that can, over the course of 2 legs in the semifinals, that can deal with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is going to be interesting to look at, and depending on how this tournament plays out and what Barcelona actually accomplishes, there's going to be some comparisons to the Pep teams, and obviously Pep is still in this tournament and having a major influence on this tournament. But a little bit of talk, Janis, for those who have become attached to Barcelona, whether it was 4 or 5 years ago or even before that, the difference between a Pep Guardiola-led Barcelona and what we're seeing now under Luis Enrique.
Different use of press, although you see that Luis Enrique is using that, but maybe, not the same as Pep did. I think you have some young players that, and the press goes with the wide players that we have to mention, because Pedro is, Messi and Neymar don't have the same role. Messi was more central. When you look at Pedro, the runs that he made behind the back four, the little diagonal runs, were incredible, right? Remember at that time, I have to be honest with you, I didn't really know who Pedro was, to be quite honest. I don't think anybody did. And if they did tell you that they knew, fair play to them, right? I mean, here's a player that scored in that year, if memory serves right. I think they won all trophies in the world, right? Like 6 trophies. Yeah. He scored in every competition, right? And remember how he was used. So I think when you look at Neymar and Messi, I think they were a little bit more direct, even with David Villa, although many suggest that he was a source of frustration for Pep Guardiola in a way, but he was still wonderful the way he got to the byline, right? Remember his tight runs. We even see that here a little bit, in MLS right now. So I think that's different. I think of Suarez, Messi, and Neymar, players that maybe use a little bit more touches on the ball. Mm-hmm. They still like to combine and get on the end of that, right? Those 1-2s where they get in front of goal. But I don't think you see as much of that, early ball out of the midfield. What Iniesta and Xavi were great, where they would find, right, that beautiful threaded pass through, and you could see Pedro and Villa from time to time, and Messi slashing through, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that is a big difference if you remember to those years. Not to say it's worse, it's different. And as I said, I think the high press is there now. You can see that Barcelona is coming back to that. But I'm not sure that it's as effective as it was under Pep. But it's probably not because of the players that I mentioned that aren't here.
And when we talk about Neymar, Suarez, Messi, when they're all on the field together, it's been true in this tournament to a certain extent. Look, they obviously they're all part of the chances that Barcelona creates more often than not. But you have this dynamic where one day it's Neymar, and he, like yesterday, scores a couple of goals, leads them to a victory, finishes. Last week it was Suarez. Or the first leg it was Suarez, excuse me. Then you have, obviously you have Messi doing what Messi does, but he's not, maybe not as streaky, but he certainly can be. If Neymar isn't playing well enough, or Suarez isn't getting his chances, it's going to be Messi. It's almost like they're taking turns here. How do you account for that when you're a defender, when you're setting up to attempt to stop Barcelona? How do you account for any of that?
Well, you just don't. You hope for the best. When you have that sort of quality, in that sort of movement, you have to be disciplined, and you can't chase. I think the teams that start chasing those three, they're going to be picked apart. So you have to let them come to you. You have to be nice and tight, right? And just, and time it perfectly. But I think a lot of times you chase it. And by the way, I want to add to that, the success of those three, what's remarkable here, and we have to pay attention, is remember when they came, I think we all were saying that they're going to need an extra ball, right? We thought they were going to be selfish. We weren't sure, how is Messi going to embrace Neymar, and Suarez to a different degree. I think that's important, not just to give credit, especially to Messi, I think, because he's their star, but to Luis Suarez, that he did find a way. And by the way, and Messi's willingness to play wide. Remember, he didn't really want to play wide. Yeah. And, under Tato, and in many ways, he played more central, didn't he, right? And all of a sudden, you see him allowing Suarez coming in there because that's, I think we agree, it's probably the best way when he comes. And Suarez can drift as well. So I think what's important here is it's not necessarily, the opposition that's important, but the key here is that these three are getting along. You can see that, and I think they're thriving on their best qualities. They're willing to play a little bit of opposition and interchange. But for the opposition, it is so difficult. I think you do have a plan going into the match, but it's not necessarily, if I'm a manager, I don't think I spend a lot of time in saying this is what we got to do because, it's difficult to do that against one player. Mm-hmm. Now imagine trying to do that against three. So the best way to do it is, again, you try to keep them in front as much as you can. And the only way to do that is when they start interchanging, to have great communication in the back, and trust in the players, in the back that you can pass them on to some degree. Because once you start chasing, say Messi comes from this, from the wide position inside, you almost have to have that fullback kind of let him go, right? Mm. Because the moment you start chasing him, he's going to find that overlapping run of say, Dani Alves or whatever it may be. So sometimes you do have to leave them.
I kind of, before I move on here, I want to talk about Bayern Munich clearly. It almost feels to me, and this is, I don't like cross-sports analogies very often, Giannis, but this is a little bit like the Miami Heat teams that had LeBron James. You felt like Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Chris Bosh, how do they get all these guys the points they need? They went on and won a title. They can work this out. That's why they're the best players in the world.
But are we still talking about Barcelona now or Bayern Munich?
Well, Barcelona. I said Barcelona. That was my last little hint there.
I mean, there's a lot to be said about pure talent when you have a lot of it. Where the role of a manager is to let the players play. I mean, that's as simple as that. They're going to come good. Manchester United may be a good example here, right? I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Van Gaal in general. Just rubs me the wrong way. But I kind of never gave up on them because, I looked at it when they struggled, for example, throughout the season, right? And you saying as a player, you're saying to yourself, they got to come good at one point. By default, they've got to. There's just too much talent on that team to be doing what they're doing. And yes, I'm sure Van Gaal, had his philosophy, and maybe players finally bought into it, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, these players are that good. They're, teams like Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Manchester United, they're so deep that the players, by the sheer quality, will find ways of winning in a number of games or the big games.
Let's talk about Bayern Munich, who, again, came back home, down 3-1 in their tie against Porto. It all set up for a pretty shocking upset. Yes, Bayern Munich's having injury problems. Yes, they're going through a bit of a rough patch. But, Porto still made their chances count in Portugal. And they go to Bayern Munich, and it takes all of 45 minutes for the Germans to turn it around. What did you see specifically from the German Giants, and how much credit for this do we give to Pep Guardiola?
Well, I think, again, you always do, I suppose, but, it was a sucker punch, that early goal, and, I mean, how quickly they scored. Sometimes you have to, is Porto that bad? Of course they're not. They showed their quality in the first leg. We all know over the years how good they've been in selling and buying talented players, but it's, when it goes against you, it happens. I've been in games like this where there's absolutely no reason or explanation why that happens. It just does. It's an avalanche of quality, right? So now you look at two teams, and on one hand, You praise Bayern Munich, you talk about depth, the players that they were missing, right? And there's a number of quality players that they were missing. But there's still so much you can go to that, obviously at home with that sort of crowd, it can happen for you. On the flip side, look, I mean, you clearly watched in this game. This is one of the few examples when you say the players that are missing just caused them. And now, I don't know if you look at Alexandro and Danilo, the two fullbacks, right?
Yeah.
And you look at the goals, I mean, all crosses, all headers, right?
Yeah.
You just have to say that if those two were there, it may have been different. Now, what that difference means, maybe Porto still goes out. Do I think that there's going to be 6-1? No, because never mind the defending that they would have done, but they would have asked questions in the wide positions going forward, because you know what Danilo does. There's a reason why he's going to be going to Real Madrid, and even Alexandro. They would allow the likes of, Jackson Martinez and others to play. Those guys didn't play because they were under tremendous amount of pressure. So Porto doesn't have that depth. Yes, they have a number of players, but they had players in those positions, that were playing out of positions, and two key players, and they got punished from those positions. So let's not overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
Pep Guardiola and Bayern Munich took advantage of that. And the funny part is, you can say there's no Ribéry and there's no Robben in those wide positions, right? But I wonder, and by the way, when I say this, I only mean for certain games, I almost think that this was a blessing for Bayern Munich. Because if you look at Robert Lewandowski, he's been tremendous. But the times that he is not good, it's because probably Robben and Ribéry hold on to the ball a little bit too long, right? If you watch Robert Lewandowski, put the ball in front of goal, and he will score. And he can score every which way. So I think what you saw there is the wide game for Bayern Munich was just a little bit simpler because, Philipp Lahm likes to cross, right? When he gets wide, even when he used to play on the right-hand side, the likes of Rafinha and Thiago and Bernat, when they go forward, right? I mean, you saw it. I mean, they enjoy crossing. They don't want to be coming inside for the most part. And guess what? Thomas Muller and Lewandowski benefited from it. So in a funny way, the two key players for Bayern Munich that everybody was crying about and worried about may actually, that may have been a good thing that they weren't there.
Yeah, right. You're talking about constricting the space, and those players wanting to cut in and maybe probably not play the ball on the cross as much. And that clearly benefited Bayern Munich. And I think that there's something to be said here, Janis, for the sheer amount of depth that Bayern Munich has at its disposal, whereas a team like Porto, who knows how to grow players, but is much thinner after the first after their first line, is without those two defenders you mentioned, Alexandro and Danilo, and they just don't have quite the quality behind those players to fill in the gaps. Bayern Munich could miss Ribéry and Robben and Schweinsteiger and Alaba, and hey, we're okay. We still have all these other guys.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that midfield, and that may be your midfield anyway. I mean, there's no guarantee that Schweinsteiger, I think he's a wonderful player, but there's no guarantee with Thiago now. You saw how good he was, back from injury. You have Xabi Alonso and Philipp Lahm. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this, to be quite honest. I mean, Götze, Lewandowski, and Muller, that doesn't sound bad. I mean, it's just so much richness in that team. It's scary. And, and of course, when they don't play well, which we've seen, in the first leg, you say, oh my God, it's easy to reach for the ones that aren't there. But that was simply because Porto were wonderful. And, the sort of momentum Porto had in this game, right? It turned around and Bayern Munich had it. And, sometimes you just can't stop that. I can't tell you in how many games I've been where you just see it coming, you know what to do, but there's just isn't enough time. It's just coming at you, and you don't have time to even make those 2 or 3 passes to just kind of stop that, right? And psychologically, I think, I don't have to tell you. I mean, how many goals they scored? 5 goals in the first half in 25 minutes? I mean, you look at Thomas Muller, who I saw it, come under pressure a little bit as of late. I'm going, you guys are crazy. I mean, this is guy, I saw the guy's 25 years old and 27 Champions League goals, right? I mean, the highest scoring German in Champions League history, and not to mention what he's done already in the World Cups, right? I mean, this is just scary what this man can do when it's all said and done.
Yeah, do you believe that he's underrated? There's been a little bit of talk about that in light of this performance. He clearly is
not in the right circles. I don't think he's underrated in the right circles.
Well, I mean, he certainly doesn't get mentioned on the level, it's Ronaldo, it's Messi, it's Zlatan.
He should be in a different way.
For
pure skill, of course, we can't compare him to Messi. They're different players. They're doing similar jobs, though, right? And, the rate at which he's scoring in such big competitions. I mentioned the World Cups, last 2 World Cups, what he's done. The Champions League, 27 goals. Now, just get your head around it. At the age of 25, 27 goals. Yes, he plays for Bayern Munich and all that, but still, you have to score, right? I mean, so I think, I suppose to a degree, I see where you're going with this. He is. I mean, I think we just kind of, at the end of the day, sometimes we look for people that can do something special, unbelievable. They look graceful on the ball, right?
Yeah, right.
Which he isn't in a way. He's a lengthy, tall guy. But, when you look at the ways he can score, and that's every which way, I don't really see why we wouldn't mention him as top 3, 4 best in the world.
Yeah.
I don't see a logical reason why not.
He certainly has incredible instincts. All right, let's turn briefly to the games that we have coming up today. Monaco down a goal at home to Juve. They are a little bit of the surprise team of this tournament to this point. Not a lot of goal scoring in the group stage. They take out Arsenal and withstand a loss at home to get through, and on away goals. And now you have Juve, who, again, get sort of a dodgy penalty at home to take a 1-goal lead. But I think this sets up pretty nicely for Monaco.
Well, it does. 1-0 is you're hoping at home it's a different mindset now, right? Because we're going to have to look for Monaco that wants to play, right? I don't think they thought the job was done, but winning away at Arsenal, what was it, 3-1, I think? Mm-hmm. It brings you home, and you could see that it affected players, right? The mentality was to defend that, to say, well, maybe not enough, but, just a different mindset. And I think, we've seen Monaco when they attack, they're a pretty good team. So I think, because they're going to have to some degree, they're still going to have to be cagey somewhat. But I think we're going to see a different Monaco. So I'm waiting to see, how they play. I don't think Juve is comfortable by any means, but this is a Juve team that's coming, on a big high. I mean, they're just starting to play even better, which, by the way, I think we have to give them credit for because, again, sort of like Bayern Munich, the Serie A is wrapped up again, right? The motivation there, might have been questioned. But if you watch the game against Lazio, who, by the way, were maybe the most informed team and wonderful flying in Serie A, I mean, they destroyed them and able to rest players in the process before the game and during the game, to be honest. So I think you have a Juventus team that is for me just now firing on all cylinders. Actually, they have some key players back. Yes, there's no Pogba, but Vidal's looking good. Pereira has been wonderful. Morata, as we knew, kind of asking what's taken him so long to implement him into that starting 11. And what can you say about Tevez, right? Here's a guy that went from not scoring in the Champions League at all to scoring in all competitions and having himself a wonderful season. You could argue one of his best.
Yeah, he's just such a handful. So fun to watch Carlos Tevez just wreak havoc on a back line. Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, no goals in the first leg. This, you would say that this sets up pretty nicely for Atleti and Diego Simeone, especially considering the injury crisis at Real. You have no Bale, no Benzema, no Modric, no Marcelo. It's going to be Ronaldo, James Rodriguez. How does Real Madrid get this done?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a tough one to call. I think we all sometimes think that we have a reasoning or logic of who's going to win it. I can honestly tell you that it's difficult. It really is. I mean, I could make stuff up here, but look, I mean, some degree, many have been saying, maybe the 4-4-2 is actually the best way to play for Real Madrid, right? Remember during the season when they had that blip, there was talk about removing Bale because they felt that Ronaldo, as you mentioned, no Benzema, but James Rodriguez has come back and looks very, very good, but still, Contrao has been a question mark. I'm disappointed because I like him. I still rate him. I still think he's a good fullback, but he hasn't been very, very good. But still, the back four is steady. Cruz not the same. I think Atletico will be, they of course were the happier ones, even though they only drew at home, but they didn't concede. Yeah. I think it sets it up nicely for them to sit and look to counter. They're tremendous defensively. I don't think we have to say how good they are actually on set pieces. Miranda, I think there was a question mark about him, or Godin, sorry, I can't remember now actually, but it looks like they're going to be playing. So Oblak, we've seen how good he's been.
Yes.
I think on paper, you'd have to give a chance to Atletico. And let's not forget, I mean, when was the last time that Real Madrid actually beat Atletico? I think it's like 9 games that Atletico Madrid are undefeated against Real Madrid. Try to get your head around that. How many teams around the world can say that, right?
Yes.
And when you think of Spanish teams, you don't even think that because, Atletico Madrid is kind of phenomenon that's coming in just under Diego Simeone. Before that, they were probably the most frustrating team in the world. They were a big name that just underperformed for many, many years of mismanagement, I suppose, or coaches changing when Jesus Hill was alive years ago. But, those are the years that I remember. So this is, that psychological effect, if you will, of knowing that Real Madrid hasn't beaten you for a long time. That goes to their advantage as well. So one may say that Atleti are probably slightly favorites here, but I don't know if at the Bernabeu, if I can say that comfortably, to be honest.
Sure. I'm not going out on a limb here, Giannis, but Antoine Griezmann has been in incredible form. I would imagine he's going to have a say in how this plays out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what a story he has been, right? There's no questions about that. But I think, strength in the midfield. Suarez is not there, but Thiago, we've seen, can play. Matter of fact, Thiago was the one that picked himself in that midfield for a long, long time, and Suarez is coming into it right now. Koke, Thuram, where do you go? But, what I like about them is that back four, though. The back four and with Oblak, I just think they're going to make it so difficult for this undermanned Real Madrid team. But Antoine Griezmann is that, a little bit of a whiz, I suppose, that Atletico has always had, right? I mean, they've always been good with striker. Mandzukic, to me, has been disappointing, but he's probably do a good game as well.
Janusz Mihalik, ESPN, Fox, TSN, I'm hearing. He's also now, I guess, my colleague at Sirius XM FC, so that's good as well. Happy birthday again, Janusz. Thank you very much for your time. We'll have you back soon.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.
There goes Janusz. Good stuff from him on the Champions League. Let's take a break. When we come back, Eric Gomez will join us. We'll talk a bunch of stuff surrounding Mexican football. Cuauhtemoc Blanco retires the champion. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we go, talking Mexico with our good friend Eric Gomez. Follow him on Twitter at Eric Gomez86. How are you doing, man?
Yeah. I'm going to try not to change my Twitter handle for the next 2 weeks. But yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, you need to stick with it for a while. You gotta commit. All right, so Eric's here. We got a lot of stuff to talk about around Mexican football, and I don't even know if we'll get to the league. I mean, we certainly can come back around to it. I want to start with Blanco last night. Eric goes out on top as the Copa MX winner with Puebla 4-2 over Chivas Guadalajara. Gets the whole on the shoulders treatment. 42 years old. It finally the window finally closes on a career that I think boggles the mind more than anything else. He's been so influential and such a character for Mexican football his entire career. Is it even possible to sort of sum him up in a couple of sentences? We might need a whole show.
Yeah, we might. And I think Cuauhtemoc is one of those rare cases that translate beyond the Mexican game and can absolutely get a whole lot of people talking in the United States, not only because of what he did with the national team for so long, but also his time in MLS, and he was great for Chicago. I remember 8 years ago when he left, everybody in the Mexican media game were thinking that this was maybe just the old retirement move. I'm just going to go in and cash out for the next 3 years and maybe take it easy. And that was absolutely not the case. I mean, he gave it all he had, and he was fantastic. He became a cult hero in Chicago. And the many times that I visited Toyota Park in those days and saw Cuauhtemoc in action, it was great to see him take the challenges seriously as he did. But to answer your question and to try and define him, I think the best way that I can do that from the vantage point of the present is to say that, Cuauhtemoc was the guy that linked 20th century Mexican soccer with the 21st century, with the now. A couple of things to realize here are he played with Hugo Sanchez at the club level with Club America back in 1992, 1993. Mm-hmm. So that's how far back his career goes, that he's able to connect with arguably the greatest Mexican player of all time on the pitch. Not only that, but I mean, he was one of two guys still active to have played the 1998 World Cup for Mexico. That's 17 years ago. The only other guy who played, who's still active, is Oscar Conejo Perez, also a 42-year-old goalkeeper. And to be fair, I think Perez is going to keep going until he's 50. So that it's a little less impressive for him, but nonetheless, it's a fantastic achievement. He's one of the handful of guys still active from the 2002 World Cup as well. So he was living history for Mexico and for Mexican fans. He was just an absolute character and one of the best players, one of the best top five players ever to suit up for Mexico.
So much about him is fascinating. Even if you're on the other side of the fence, as I am clearly as a U.S. Fan, he did so much that became iconic. That was that transcended sort of those moments that there've been great players throughout the history of that rivalry, or just for Mexico in general, and maybe they don't have the same panache. I don't know if that's the right word. I mean, he had that shuffling, he had that shuffling gait when he ran, and he, the goal celebrations, and just the little flicks and just the things that he could do that you didn't necessarily expect a player, because he never seemed very athletic, Eric.
No, absolutely not. Even in his younger days. No, he's very much in that Juan Roman Riquelme mold. I remember years ago, and it struck me as being revolutionary for that time. This was probably late 90s, early 2000s, but in Mexico, this was not the type of thing that would be said out loud. And Blanco essentially derided. He knew that he was bigger than life at that point. He said, "You know what? My only bosses are the ones in the stands, and I play for them. And if I do something on the pitch that pleases them, it doesn't matter if the manager on the touchline is not as pleased." So he was entertainment, pure and simple. And you would see that when he would take advantage of the biggest stages to do whatever it is that he could to make people smile, make people clap. And again, you know, I go back to that 1998 World Cup against South Korea where he did that bunny hop move and pretty much put Mexico on the map during that World Cup and made it so that people would pay a little bit more attention to that team, the same way, you know, a guy like Miguel Herrera had people paying attention to Mexico in 2014 because of his antics. And Cuauhtemoc did his on the pitch. I mean, he did them in a live game situation. So it was great to see. Again, you know, he's one of those guys that has a resume that is very difficult to match for any Mexican football player. 1999, the only Confederations Cup win for Mexico, he was a big part of that. He was a big part of the complete and absolute domination that Mexico had over the Gold Cup and over the region in the late 90s. And he's pretty much the entire reason why Mexico was able to qualify for the 2002 World Cup anyway. He came back from a very, very gruesome injury, a knee injury that kept him out for the better part of a year and pretty much wrecked his chances to build a steady career in Spain. Comes back in a very crucial game against Honduras and then scores 2 goals to put Mexico through to the World Cup. So he's had this kind of cult hero status for a long time. And to cap a 22-year career off with a trophy and against the team that, you know, again, he hasn't played for America in 8 years, but he is most closely identified with America, and he played for the team for the better part of 15 years. So to have the old horse, you know, the former America player beat Chivas in his last game and to lift up that trophy, it was just an amazing moment.
Now, Mexican football will be poorer for the lack of Cuauhtemoc Blanco on the pitch, but is he going to be around the game? I mean, I know politics are on his agenda.
Yeah, politics are on his agenda right now. I think I'm not going to delve into a Mexican politics lesson on Soccer Morning, but you know, it's pretty clear to me that he wants to remain in the public eye, and a big part of that would be to go through with this campaign. Help out some of his friends in the political arena. In Mexico, you need 5% of the votes in a popular election to remain active as a political party. Otherwise, your register is canceled. There's no question to me that Cuauhtemoc Blanco is going to get more than 5% of the mayoral votes for his election. He might get a significant amount more. I'm not sure he's going to win, but he said that his plan B, so to speak, is to go to Europe for a few months. He's very good friends with Marcelo Bielsa. Bielsa coached America in the 1990s. He says Bielsa is one of his idols and has asked him many times to go visit him in France over the last year. He says he'll go visit Leo Ben-Hacker, the former Real Madrid manager, who also managed America in the early 90s. Ben-Hacker, of course, involved in the Dutch game. So he's got some friends in high places that he's going to take advantage of in order to study and just get a feel for the managerial game. I'm pretty sure that he's going to come back in the next 2 to 3 years, and he's going to find a job as an assistant coach somewhere. And, I see him coaching probably before the next World Cup. Whether he's going to be coaching a big team like America, I don't know. You know, that's pretty difficult to tell, and he's made a lot of enemies as well as friends over the course of his career. And currently, you know, the Club America president, Ricardo Peláez, is not a very good friend of Cuauhtemoc. So I think there would need to be a regime change for him to come back to the club that he loves the most, so to speak. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see him evolve from the style of player that he was to the style of manager that you can only expect him to be, which is, you know, just a flashy guy wearing maybe not the most expensive suit, but jumping around and screaming, a little bit in that Piojo mold for sure.
Absolutely. Speaking of the club he's most associated with, Club America, in the Champions League final, first leg tonight in Mexico City against the Montreal Impact. I'm not saying anything anybody doesn't know when I say, excuse me, Eric, that Club America is a massive favorite in this tie over 2 legs, but we would expect them to build that lead tonight. And yet there may be some question over whether their heads are always on straight for these things. Do you expect Club America to get the job done?
We're seeing a lot of Jekyll and Hyde from Club America, and I think there was a lot of speculation as to whether they would even get past the semifinal because of some of the results that they had been accruing in the league. Certainly not the best results. They came back, they stormed back, and beat Herediano 6-0. Then they turn around and they get clubbed at home, 4-0 by Querétaro, and Ronaldinho scored a couple of very lovely goals. And, he got standing ovation from the Estadio Azteca, almost brought him to tears. And he was like, well, this happened to me all those years ago at the Bernabeu, and now it's happening to me again in one of the biggest stadiums in the world, and a stadium that's very, very near and dear to Brazilians' hearts because of the 1970 World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
It was still weird to see. It was very strange to see 80,000 Club America fans in those yellow jerseys applauding a rival player. And I don't think that would have happened even if it were Ronaldinho as late as last year. This team has been very inconsistent under their new manager, Gustavo Matosas. You can definitely ask questions of them in certain areas. I think that the change from the 4-4-2 or, the 4-2-3-1, as it were, with Antonio Mohamed, shifting into a 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2, whatever, has been difficult on the team. I think Matosas expected it to be smooth because they played under that system with Miguel Herrera in 2013, so not too long ago. But again, in Mexican soccer, 2 years can be a lifetime. You can have 4 managers in that period. It doesn't really make any difference.
Right.
So they're really having trouble defending against quick teams. And I know that Montreal have given other Mexican teams like Pachuca a rough time, especially just kind of, I don't even want to call it a counterattack, a pure counterattack strategy. But I know that when they've decided to go into that mode for even short periods of the match, they've been very successful. So I would be very wary of America's back line against guys like Jack Mack in this game. And I certainly would hope, for Club America's sake, that they strap their, a very English thing to say, but they strap their shooting boots extra tight, because they've been missing the target on some seemingly easy chances over the course of the last few games. Even during that 6-0 game when they were pretty sharp, you got the feeling that game could have ended 10-0 or 12-0 because Herediano was just so shell-shocked. They didn't do a good enough job of completely exploiting that advantage, but they got the job done.
Right.
So it's a difficult thing to predict now with Club America. Are they the favorites? Yeah, they are the favorites. They're at home. They've got probably the best team, if you want to look at that roster, in CONCACAF.
Mm-hmm.
And a few of those guys should be playing in Europe. But whether they are able to translate that onto the pitch for 90 minutes or 180 minutes, that's going to be hard to tell. So I think the first 15 minutes, if Montreal can survive the first 15 minutes of this game without conceding, then they've got a very good chance to get a good result out of Azteca.
I'm going to be looking for a couple of things from Montreal's end. You mentioned the speed game. Dominic Aduro is not he's not a finisher. He's not a guy you trust necessarily to score goals, but he can cause problems, certainly. So we'll see if he's an influence tonight. And then the back line for Montreal, they have to be careful. Samari and Kamara, both card risks waiting to happen. Samari in particular has been playing pretty rough through this tournament, so I don't know exactly how he can approach this, and the atmosphere is going to be a problem for Montreal. I just can't imagine you walk into the Azteca, a full house in attendance, and think that you're going to just take a deep breath and get through it.
Right. Oh, well, the deep breath part is important too. A lot of these players have not been even exposed to a just contamination-filled atmosphere such as Mexico City.
Sure.
I understand. I mean, I think the best part of this game for Montreal is the fact that it's not during the daytime. I mean, if this game were even at 5 p.m., I mean, it's been very, very hot here in Mexico City, hot and muggy, 80-degree weather. When it doesn't rain in Mexico City, it gets very, very nasty, and the blue sky turns into just a grayish muck because of all the smog in the air. That's been the case. It hasn't rained in Mexico City for the last week. So it's been very, very muggy. It's been difficult. That's not going to wash away during the nighttime, but at least it's not going to be as hot for them. So that makes their speed game a possibility. Aduro, you mentioned, again, there are a lot of guys that can really hurt Club America if you want to play that game. So I would definitely hope that they push back a little bit when the Impact have the ball, but it's just not an easy thing to do, really, to walk into the Estadio Azteca, especially for a final, and to just block it out of your mind. The game has been sold out. I mean, it's sold out during the pre-sale for Club America season ticket holders. So that just tells you the amount of expectation for this game, and it really shows the growth of CONCACAF Champions League. I mean, I fail. Again, I just think about this game, what it would have been 2-3 years ago, and I don't think it would have been a full house for Club America. I just don't think the interest was there.
Right.
And to see the current edition of this Champions League, and to see how it's gone with all the upsets and all the difficult games played away from home for teams like Club America, there's a real interest for this.
Yeah.
And again, this team has not been to a FIFA Club World Cup since 2006. So it's a big deal for fans. It's a big deal for the current management, for the players, and I fully expect them to go out and give all they got. So it's going to be a very, very difficult game.
Yeah, this particular final, and maybe some of the matches that came before it, clearly in the knockout rounds, it seems to elevate the tournament just a little bit. That's a matter of circumstance, as you mentioned, with Club America not going to the Club World Cup since 2006, and maybe 3 or 4 years ago, there's not this interest. Montreal being the finalist, not only is that amazing and unexpected, but they're also the type of town that can sell 60,000 seats when they play inside an Olympic Stadium. So that they're going to have that for the return leg. They just need to keep this close. We'll hope, from MLS's perspective, from Montreal's perspective, for the casual fans' perspective, the nonpartisan. Just want to see Montreal keep it close at that return leg, have something left in it. Before I let you go, Eric, and I'm running out of time before I have to take phone calls, I want to just touch on the Mexico U23s taking on the United States tonight in Carson, California at the StubHub Center. This is an opportunity for Andy Herzog to get a look at the team he might be taking to Olympic qualifying. What is the outlook for Mexico in this game, and what kind of talent should we expect to see on the field?
Mexico's youth system has been on a tear for the last 10 years. The system that Jesus Ramirez, the guy who won the 2005 Under-17 World Cup as a manager, the system that he set up has remained intact, which for Mexico is an amazing thing. I know that, Jurgen Klinsmann has been talking for the last 4 years about instilling a system for the United States to play, the type of player that he wants to see, the type of strategy that he wants to see, and definitely hiring a guy like Herzog is part of that plan. Mexico has seen several managers go through for the last 10 years at the U17, U23 level, and they've done a very good job of maintaining the course that Ramirez set. So this is a very talented group of players that they've got going into this game. A lot of the 2011 Under-17 world champs are there. You've got guys like Jonathan Espericueta, who recently scored a goal in the Copa Libertadores for Tigres. You've got another guy like Kevin Escamilla at Pumas, who debuted last weekend, a very, very good midfielder. A couple of U.S.-born guys on the roster as well. Ubaldo Luna, the Tigres striker, I believe he was born in Texas. I believe he was actually called up for the U.S. U20s at one point, but Mexico snatched him away. And you've got guys like Marco Bueno, who was also one of those U17 world champs. He's been getting a lot of minutes in the first division for Toluca. So I think the main difference is that a few years ago, if you would bring a U23 team into any friendly, into any tournament, it would be kind of a first look for Mexican fans, for a lot of those players, they would not have been getting regular first-team minutes in Mexico. Mexico is one of those leagues that typically did not debut guys under 20 years of age. Now they're doing that, and now they're getting a lot of very great results from guys like Gil Buron over at Querétaro, and I know Manuel Lahoud, the goalkeeper for Tijuana, has been getting some pretty good looks in the Cup and other places. This is a team that has a very good amount of professional experience under its belt. They've got talented guys, guys that I understand have foreign scouts tailing them as of now. Marco Bueno has been on the Premier League's radar for the last 3 years. He was at one point part of a package deal with Hector Herrera, who eventually ended up at Porto. Bueno was going to go to Liverpool with Hector Herrera back in 2011, 2012. That did not come to pass, but he's still a guy that's 21 years old. He can definitely, at whatever point, just pick it up and go apply his trade in Europe. He's that good. So it's going to be a very interesting game. If the United States gets another 2-0, you have my permission to be even happier for that result than you were for last week against Mexico's C team. I mean, this is the top under 23 squad that Mexico has to offer. This is the best of the best, aside from a couple of guys who are in Europe. This is a very, very good opportunity for them to strut their stuff for sure.
Big challenge for the United States and Andy Herzog. I mean, perhaps we'll go over this roster for the U.S. in a bit. We're going to let Eric go. Eric Gomez 86 on Twitter. Make sure you're following him. He's got some excellent new projects coming up. I know what they are, but they're secret right now, so we'll talk about them later. Eric, appreciate the time and the insight as always. Hopefully we'll have you back soon.
Hey, way to build up on the excitement. Thanks so much.
All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll open up the phone lines, take your calls. Go again. Look at this roster for the U23s. I'm going to ask you a question about Montreal in the Champions League. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, worldsoccertalk.com.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
There we go, back on Soccer Morning. Phone lines are now open, 646-832-3909. Dial it into your phone. Give me a call. Question for you here. As we get ready, not only the UEFA Champions League, we're all looking forward to these games. That Madrid derby game, I'm so inconsistent, is going to be fun to watch. Well, regardless of the physicality on display, these are the most talented players in the world. I mentioned Griezmann, and you obviously have Cristiano Ronaldo on the field, and James Rodriguez, and there's talent across the board for these two teams. But in terms of North America and this CONCACAF Champions League final, first leg coming up at Azteca between Club America and Montreal, I have to ask, are you MLS for Montreal? If you're an MLS fan and you're not a Montreal Impact fan, Are you rooting for Montreal to get it done against Club America? Do you care? Remember, back in 2011 when RSL went to the final against Monterrey, it was MLS for RSL. Everybody was all in. Let's get a title for MLS. You know what? I'm a Chicago Fire fan, but I'm going to root for RSL to win this thing. I'm a Galaxy fan, DC United fan, Houston Dynamo, whatever it is you are. Back then, there was that kumbaya element. It was the MLS version of hashtag Team Soccer. I'm not a big fan of hashtag Team Soccer. Not a big fan of everybody has to be on board the same train all the time. It doesn't rub me the right way, and I feel like we should be evolved past that in the United States. National team, different story. We're not even all for one national team, and that's fine. So are we rooting for Montreal tonight? Do we have to root for Montreal tonight? It doesn't mean I'm rooting for Club America. Let's just be honest about that. Be clear. I'm not necessarily rooting for Club America to win, but neither am I going to put a whole lot of emotional investment into Montreal. I feel like our man up in New York, Washington, shirt number 5, is not on board with me.
I'm not on board with you, Jason. I hate to tell you that. I do have my heart with Montreal, even though I'm not a Montreal fan. And even though I know the technicality, they didn't qualify as an MLS team. They qualified as a Canadian team. But I don't care about all that. All that is just smoke and mirrors. They carry the MLS flag. They have MLS on their jersey. And this would definitely be a milestone for us. I mean, I've been following this league since before it existed. When the U.S. got the 1994 World Cup, one of the provisions was that they start a league in the United States, and I've been following since that day. So this to me is a major milestone. Yes, I am for Montreal tonight, and I implore all MLS fans to watch on TV tonight and support Montreal, because regardless of all the technicalities, this is a milestone for us if they win. Now, you asked earlier, you were speaking to the guests, what do they have to do? I really think if they can somehow keep it to a draw, or maybe even a 2-1 loss with an away goal, I think they're in good form for the second leg. Well,
they definitely need to carry hope back with them to Canada, and they have to come out of this game tonight with hope. Now, that's what I'm asking. What is the threshold for hope? You say they'd be in good shape with a 1-goal loss or a draw. Clearly, a draw would be an amazing result for them. A 1-goal loss, a 1-goal loss with an away goal would be a pretty fantastic result as well. Do they have hope at 3-1? Do they have hope at 2-0?
Yes, with 2-0, yes, they have goal. With a 3-1, because of the away goal, they still have hope. Because if they win it, let's say it's 3-1, and in Olympic Stadium in Montreal, they end up winning 2-0. They win. Yeah. They win the aggregate because of the away goal rule. So, yes, I still think they have hope with that.
Okay, fair enough. Washington from New York saying, everybody all in on MLS for Montreal. Hashtag MLS for Montreal. Maybe you're not that guy. Let's go to Washington State. Who's this?
Hello, this is Dustin from Bellevue, Washington.
Hey, what's going on, Dustin?
Not much. First time calling here. I like the show. I've been listening to it for years on end. So
I appreciate that.
My quick question is, you bring a good point about, everyone rooting for Montreal. If you're a Major League Soccer fan, even if it's not your team, you're rooting basically for Montreal. One of my big things I've noticed is that, as you know, this week Seattle Portland's playing. It'd be kind of interesting to take a poll, or just, I've never seen it yet, but it'd be interesting to see how many Seattle fans would root for Portland if, let's say, Portland made the Champions League final. Or vice versa.
Well, look, I mean, there's clearly a case-by-case situation. Do I expect TFC fans to be rooting for Montreal tonight? No, I don't. But I guess you could make the argument that except in those special cases, people should be. And again, I think we should evolve past this. What I don't like maybe is that the league takes up the mantle, or that there are people in positions of authority who are pushing the idea of MLS for Montreal. The fans want to choose individually to root for Montreal tonight, I can't tell them not to. We've got a couple people here on Twitter. Mike says rooting for Montreal, but won't be broken if they lose. Chris says, kind of, but only the novelty of having a non-Mexican team win rather than out of some MLS duty, sense of MLS duty. Vamos DCU says, I think it builds the tournament in the U.S. if someone from MLS wins it. I want CCL to be a bigger deal. Andrew says yes. He's going to pull for Montreal. Let's see. Navid says, an MLS fan, of course we're rooting for Montreal. We're all in this together. Ken says, I'm pulling for Montreal tonight. Portland, maybe not if they get there. And then Mike asked an interesting question. I'll put this to you, Dustin. Do you think that there's a disconnect because they're a Canadian team? I mean, as Washington said, we all realize they didn't qualify because of their accomplishments within MLS. They qualified because they won the Canadian Cup. Because they're Canadian, does that separate them from American soccer fans who might otherwise root for an American MLS team?
I mean, it really depends, like you said before, kind of person by person thing. So, personally, for me, I'm definitely rooting for Montreal for the sake of MLS, I guess. At the end of the day, that's what I'm doing.
All right.
I mean, there are teams in MLS, honestly, that I probably wouldn't root for, being, Portland's one of them because they are my rival, and why would I root for my rival? It doesn't make sense to me.
Would you root for Vancouver?
I want my rival to get trophies.
Dustin, if this was Vancouver, would you root for them?
That's a tough one because they're our northern rivals.
Yeah, but they're so nice.
I think at the end of the day, I actually, yeah. I don't even know at this point. Right. I probably, as a fan, I probably would,
All right,
but rooting for Portland would be the hardest thing for me to do. I could just never do it. And I know for a fact that there are Portland fans out there, or Portland Timbers supporters, Timbers Army supporters, or whatnot, whatever supporter you want to call them. They would probably say no. They would never root for Sale any way, shape, or form.
Of course,
there were people rooting against the Seahawks, and they were from Portland as well. So. You kind of get my drift.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
they hate anything from Seattle at the end of the day.
Thanks for the call,
Thank
Dustin.
you for taking my call, man.
Appreciate it. There goes Dustin in Bellevue, Washington. Let's move on. Talk to Ray in Milwaukee. What's up, Ray?
Yeah, I think it's going to be 3-1, and I think it's absolutely right. The first 15 minutes of that game is really going to determine the outcome. But I'm rooting for Montreal from a different perspective. My girlfriend is a huge Club America fan, and I'm a Chivas fan. And so there's no way I ever want to see Club America win any title.
Of course. Yeah, that gives you a reason to root for Montreal. That has nothing to do with this all in the same team. We're all on the same team. We're all MLS guys. Everybody root for MLS. Yay, go MLS. It's not necessarily. I'm gonna call you out for rooting for Montreal. Root for Montreal if you want to. It's sort of this notion that there needs to be some sort of movement that we all should be putting hashtags on our tweets for to push other MLS fans to root for Montreal. I don't think that that's necessary anymore. I really don't. And I don't think that you should care. Look, I want MLS to be successful nationally and across two countries, the U.S. and Canada, because it'll benefit the league in the long run, especially with TV rights money and everything else. But I also want people to care about their team. I don't give a crap about any other NFL team but mine. I don't give a crap about any other baseball team but mine. I don't know why that would be different in this situation with soccer.
That's true. The only time really is when money's involved. That's the only time that you really should care if it's not your team. But I just want because I gotta live. I gotta live with this girl. You know what I'm saying? She's she's already gloating the fact that they have one more title than us now. And the way Club America's form has been, one good game and then they have one bad game. So if they have a good game tonight, they'll probably have a bad game on Sunday.
Yeah, but okay, that might be good for you, but that's not going to be good for Montreal because they need that bad game to happen tonight. And as we just talked about with Eric, they felt Querétaro on the weekend, so there goes the bad game. They're going to come back with the Dr. Jekyll element of it. I appreciate the phone call, Ray.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Ray in Milwaukee. Ray in Milwaukee might be verging on a shirt number. We got a couple other candidates out there. I know Eddie in Brooklyn is angling for a shirt number. If I can get Eddie in Brooklyn on the line, I'll probably give him the opportunity to pick his number. But he hasn't called in over the last couple of days, and we just came up with that idea the other day. 646-832-3909 is your phone number. Maybe you saw this bouncing around Twitter this morning. Interactive map or whatever this is, a map of English team support by tweets. So it's a map of the world, and it's color coded to show which teams are supported where when it comes to the English Premier League. Arsenal and Chelsea are the most followed teams in the United States. Trevor, I'm not saying that. Trevor's made a terrible pun. I'm not doing that. Arsenal, Chelsea, the most followed. Is that surprising to you? I mean, I'm not surprised that Arsenal's popular. I'm definitely not surprised that Chelsea's popular. But I think I had this sense that Manchester United was the most followed, most tweeted, most talked about team in the United States. I always felt like Manchester United had an established base of fans here that, despite their setbacks for the last couple of years, that they were still on top of the heap when it came to American soccer fans. Guess that's not the case. I can't get this to scroll so I can look at the rest of it and tell you about it, but needless to say, it's all over the place. I think SiriusXM FC actually tweeted it out this morning as well, so go check that out. I've seen these Facebook ones usually. The Facebook ones, there was a Facebook one for MLS, I think last week or 2 weeks ago. Sort of identified what teams are supported where in MLS. And you look at that map and some of the spots didn't make sense. And obviously you don't have a whole lot of data in certain areas of the country. There are some counties, I think, that probably don't have a lot of tweets about MLS. Is there counties out there? It's definitely true. There's going to be counties out there in this country that have zero Facebook posts or comments or tweets about MLS. Right? Dan on Twitter here. As a West Ham fan, I still root for English teams in Champions League despite rivalries. Is that usual? Is that commonplace? I would love to know. Is that a common thing? There are countries out there with zero Facebook posts, period, because they haven't gotten it yet. It's a very good point, Trevor. I hadn't considered that. Counties haven't got, they don't have high-speed internet yet. Let's see. Brian Carlos says, I don't think so. Would Rapid fans feel differently if it was FC Dallas or something? I don't think so. In terms of rooting for Montreal in this tournament. Dan Wolf 02. MLS is a one team club with 20 branches. The support for communism is hilarious. So there we go. Got to get those digs in. And on MLS. It's really not one team club with 20 branches. It's not. Because these things are not as clear as that. Because a club's identity is what you make it. Or what you believe it to be. It's a nebulous concept. What is a club made up of? It's made up of the fans, okay? Over the course of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, those people change and turn over. You new generations. The ownership of the club is going to change. The management of the club is going to change. The chairman of the board the board itself is going to change. The players are definitely changing. So what makes a club a club? The stadium, maybe, if you have a permanent place to call home. Seba, I'm not going to say your name. It's no different than cheering on your conference in college sports. Well, that's something I think is stupid. So now you know where I stand on that. I'm not a big fan of SEC. It makes no sense to me. Rooting for Montreal because I think the sooner an MLS team wins CONCACAF, the better. Believe MLS and the U.S. men's national team need each other, says Richard. Well, this is obviously a Canadian team, clearly, but I guess it reflects back on the rest of MLS. Does it reflect on American soccer at all? There's American players in this team, but does it reflect on American soccer? John in Texas wants to talk about this. What's up, John?
Hey, Jason, how you doing, man?
I'm good.
Good, man. I don't mean to necessarily beat a dead horse, but there's one comment that you made that I wanted to talk about. And you said you follow your NFL team, and outside of that, you don't necessarily care about any other NFL teams. And I actually agree with you on that. I'm from Dallas. I follow the Cowboys. I really have very little interest in any other NFL team outside the Cowboys. But
sure.
but no one else in, I call it league play. No one else in NFL play represents me, and so I think we're not necessarily talking about the same thing from a.
You're right.
With respect to the CONCACAF Champions League, No, of course I don't.
Right.
Care, really about Montreal.
The Cowboys aren't going out into the world flying the American NFL flag and playing against teams from other places attempting to win a title. I get that. That's definitely a different dynamic at play here.
Yeah. So and that's all. I want to say that, and I agree with you. Maybe this whole hashtag, campaign for Montreal is a bit much. But I will be rooting for them tonight.
Okay, fair enough.
If they lose, I'm not going to go to the local watering hole and drown my sorrows all night long. I don't care about them in that way.
Right.
But I will be rooting for them tonight because I certainly have. Club America doesn't do anything for me.
Well,
my team doesn't play in Liga
right.
MX.
Well, is it binary though? I mean, I guess that's the question. If you're not rooting for Club America, do you have to root for Montreal and vice versa? I don't think that's. I mean, I'm going to watch this game as a sort of a dispassionate observer. I mean, I'll be thrilled to see Montreal go through thrilled for their fans, thrilled for all the people who do care about them going through. But I myself am not tying my self-worth, my league self-worth, meaning because I'm an MLS fan, I'm not going to tie that to this game or to this championship series. I'm just not going to do that. I got to move on. Thanks for the call, John. John in Texas. Let's talk to Rick in Philly. Probably last caller of the day, Rick. What's going on?
Jason, I wasn't even going to call in, but when you're talking about, why you support these clubs and all, and why you would choose in each matchup, I mean, do I hope America loses? Yeah, absolutely. I hate Mexican football, and if MLS does well, it's good for all the teams in MLS. But when you look at teams, I'm going to support an EPL team even though my team doesn't. That doesn't make any sense to me because the division there, those are independent entities. MLS, it's sort of a rising tide element to that. But if I did root for an EPL team, I don't think I'd be rooting for Manchester United or Chelsea, God help us, to do well.
So you're telling me that if PSV had a nice run in the Champions League, made it to the quarterfinals, and Ajax was done, that you wouldn't be pulling for PSV?
Not even remotely. I'd be actively rooting against PSV.
Okay, fair enough. And I think that's.
But again, that's a rivalry thing. I mean,
no, I know.
It gets down to why you support a club, and if you support an MLS team because you believe that soccer needs to improve its position in American society, then you'd support MLS as a whole. If you support a team for ideological reasons or for stylistic reasons, I support Ajax. Therefore, I support Bayern because I like Louis van Gaal. Because they play a similar style, because there's ties there. Given the choice, I would support Barca, I suppose, if I cared about La Liga, because, again, there's those ties there.
I think this comes back to, and I don't have time to get into it today, and maybe we'll see what the result is tonight and have a chance to talk about tomorrow, but it comes back to the notion of how valuable this tournament is to the idea of MLS being legitimate, as if MLS needs this tournament to legitimize it, or that whether or not this tournament has the capability of legitimizing MLS, Rick. I mean, that's at the root of all of my feelings about where this. And look, again, I've identified the Champions League has gotten a little bit more important this year, taking a small step forward, a half step, if you will. There are going to be a lot of fans in the stadium tonight in Mexico City. There's going to be a lot of fans in the stands in Montreal for the second leg. So that clearly indicates to me something is happening, something's bubbling up, and when it rises to the level of, wow, this is actually a big deal, I suppose I will care about that. The Club World Cup is its own different thing, and whether or not that matters is that's a whole topic.
Yeah. And before I hop off, can I get number 14?
Yes, I'll give you number 14. Rick in Philly, number 14, shirt number for Soccer Morning. We got two now. You? Yeah, so you're number 14, and why am I blanking on who's number 5? I just blanked on 5. Oh, it's my man.
Washington?
Yeah, it's my man Washington in New York. It's been a day, and we got a lot of stuff going on around here. Rick and Philly, appreciate the call, man. There you go. Rick's the last caller of the day. Let's wrap up this episode of Soccer Morning on Wednesday. Again, a full day of soccer. Gonna go home. You're gonna watch some Champions. Well, you're not gonna go home and watch Champions League if you're working, but I'm gonna go home and watch some Champions League. You're gonna try to watch it at work. Follow the stories as they happen in Madrid, in Monaco, and then tonight we've got the Champions League of North America, Club America, and Montreal, and then the U.S. So I'm not sure the timing, but whatever. USA Mexico in the U23s from the StubHub Center. That'll be a good time. We'll talk about all of that tomorrow. Make sure you go to backheel.com/store, buy yourself a mug right here. There's the mug. Clink. Make sure you go to 30fc.com to buy yourself a Soccer Morning t-shirt. And worldsoccertalk.com is your home for pretty much everything on world football. It's definitely the home of Soccer Morning. worldsoccertalk.com/live if you want to check it out as it happens. Anything else, Trevor? Am I done? We wrap this one up, I think. I think we're probably finished. Thank you very much to Giannis Mahalik and Eric Gomez for joining us today. We'll have 2 more excellent guests for you tomorrow, I'm sure. We'll talk to you then. See ya.